There you are, and here I am, which means it's time for another one of these Talking with Myself episodes. Do you see the world as dark and dreary, stormy and violent, or maybe loving and beautiful? We all have a perspective, and whether or not your idea is original or not comes from other people and our own self doubt. My experience as a writer, creator, or artist is likely different than yours. Even if we grew up in the same neighborhood together, your story is likely different than mine. The details that you find interesting about the world are likely not the same details that I find important. When it comes to writing music, I tend to spend more time considering the words, the poetry, the story of the song. As far as I'm aware, there's no one way to write a song. But if you do know what that one way is, feel free to like, subscribe, and then put a comment down below and tell me exactly what your pattern or your formula is. As you may or may not know by now, I play quite a few instruments, some of them even decently. You might assume that most of the time when I do my writing, it's on a guitar, but I assure you this wall behind me is more a sign of an impulse control problem than anything else. When I write, it may be with a guitar in hand, it may be a piano, it may be a computer where I just begin programming a beat, or maybe a melody with a piano or a synthesizer. I don't know necessarily where the song's going to come from sometimes. Other times I'm very focused. I sit down, I know what the melody is going to be, I know what the riff is going to be, and I'll knock a song out in less than an hour. Now, if you've listened to any of my music, any of the old stuff to the new Amnia Jinx stuff, you'll note that I'm kind of a fan of 4/4 timing. I like verse, chorus, verse, chorus. I try to make it sound a little different. I try to add a little bit of emotion and dynamics. I might change the bridge or play around with how many verses come before the chorus, but I'm always kind of trying to fall in that format and also not fall in that format. Now, a couple of good examples of that are the song Without a Trace or the newer song Minefield. Both are very, very simple, just slamming out 4 or 5 chord songs. But that's the kind of feeling that I was following when writing those songs. I wanted them to be very bold and in your face. They weren't about being complex. Now, on the other hand of that, if you listen to songs like Echoes or Fragment, which is newer, they're written to be a little bit more like an epic. And not like epic like Metallica. I'm not going for a 12, 18-minute song. I'm following a feeling right to the end, and I'm going to do that however I can. For Fragment, the style was actually kind of built off of watching an anime. I wanted to kind of write something in the style of a lot of the theme songs that I hear there. Style typically comes from experimentation. Great examples of this are easily like 1990s punk and grunge bands, or even better, ZZ Top. Listen to some of the bass lines, listen to some of the drum lines. They're not incredibly simple, but they're also not super complicated, yet they hold the song together in a way that just drives it forward. There's a lot of music out there like that. There's nothing wrong with writing a couple of those songs. You probably don't want to write an entire album of those songs because then it gets kind of boring. What do I think the key to writing a song is? To just sit down and start writing. You can pick out afterwards which songs you think fit your mold the best, but if you don't start writing something, you're not going to get anywhere. If you listen to the first Amnia Jinx album versus the newest ones, there's an evolution there. And if you can't hear it, you're not listening hard enough. When I hear it, there's all sorts of places that I cringe. There's a couple of places that I'm really proud of. There's a couple of songs I'd love to go back and re-record, but kind of early to be doing that, don't you think? The other thing that you want to be careful of when you're in a band and writing is someone going, "Oh, but that sounds like this song on the radio." Yeah, but is it that song on the radio? Does it sound like we're ripping them off, or does it just sound like their style? Because maybe you like that band. It's unintentionally become part of your style. There's nothing wrong with that inherently, as long as you're not directly ripping them off. And really, isn't the whole point of being in a band to have a unique sound because you're part of a band? If you're not looking for that sound, then why aren't you just recording on your own? I mean, some people do it. Give the song time to grow. There's plenty of songs that I write and then the next day I don't like anymore. It doesn't mean I delete them. I put them aside. I'm going to come back and look at them later. Maybe there's something in the feeling that I had when I started to write it that I don't have that feeling anymore. Maybe it's going to reconnect with me later, or maybe there's something about it that will kind of reignite me to write something else. Maybe it was the beginning, kind of the seed of what was to come. What I'm trying to get at is you don't need to be the judge of it. You just need to get something from it. You started to create something, you should probably finish it, don't you think? Until that song at least resembles somewhat what you were aiming for, you haven't really created anything yet. And remember, you're trying to harness a feeling or a moment, something that you're trying to express to the people you plan on performing or displaying this art to. If you know anything about music or even follow any band that has a decades long career, you'll hear some story about how they had to write this song as a filler or just off the cuff and they didn't think it would go that far and suddenly it became their hit. Or they'll have a story like, well, we thought this should have been the single on the album, but the label thought this. Ultimately, who's right? Who gets to decide that? Neither one of them. It's the people listening who get to decide that, which means you're never going to be good at being the judge of what other people like. So you should enjoy it yourself before anyone else. As a high school art student, I remember handing in a particular sketch of mine that there were parts of I was very happy with and other parts that I still thought needed more work, but you got to turn the work in. So as I handed it to my art teacher, I started to tell him, well, I'm really happy with this, but this thing is, and he said, stop. Your job is not to critique your work. That's everyone else's job. What you need to do is find some moment to come to peace with it. Sometimes it's those things you see as flaws which make your artwork unique. Speaking from a music fan's perspective, it's always been my belief that any band that has at least a couple albums worth of songs to their name will have at least one song that I like, no matter what style, what genre of music they play. So why haven't I heard your song yet?